Good morning. My name is Dr. Joyce Alberts, clinical psychologist based in North Canterbury, working in private practice. I've been posting a series of videos on my YouTube channel in relation to concerns around the Gloriavale Christian community and the harm that this causes. In my first video, I explained my personal encounter with Neville Cooper, who later changed his name to Hopeful Christian. So, Neville Cooper being the founder of the Gloriavale Christian community. At the time when they were based in North Canterbury, they were commonly referred to as the Cooperites. In the second video, I look at the claim that's made on the Gloriavale Christian community website that the wider New Zealand home birth movement resulted in the 1974, I believe it was, as a result of home births occurring at Springbank and the beliefs of the Cooperites at that time that a godly Christian woman will have an easy time during childbirth, and that led to other people thinking this is what they would like to do. So I did some fact checking in that second video, and not surprisingly, there does not seem to be any documentation or attribution or link to the Cooperites at that time and their teachings and beliefs around home birth. And in fact, it seems to have stemmed from the wider New Zealand women's movement, where women were in the 70s, late 60s, early 70s, wanting to have more autonomy and be involved in decision making and planning around their childbirth. In the third video, I explored the convictions and allegations and then later prison sentence of Neville Cooper, aka Hopeful Christian, his subsequent release from prison, his return to the Gloriavale community, his subsequent marriage to a 17-year-old girl following the death of his first wife, Gloria. My fourth video is still uploading. I had a problem with that, and so I wasn't able to upload it immediately. So that's underway. And in the fourth video, you'll see that I looked in part at evidence that Mr. Howard Temple gave during the Royal Commission of Inquiry into Abuse and Care in faith-based organisations. And during that, a memory of mine was triggered as I'm talking about this, about another group based in North Canterbury that were known as the God Squad, and their compound, which certainly was a compound, was known as Camp David. So I did some research around that just to make sure that my memory was accurate. And I was comparing and doing some superficial comparison between the God Squad community and their practices and the Gloriavale Christian community. And in part, that was due to a concern made during the documentary Devotion, the Gloriavale story, where it was suggested by one of the leaders that the police raid on the Springbank community in 1994 was an overreaction, and there was made mention of the incident that occurred in Waco, Texas. I think I called them the David Davidians or something. I think they were the Branch Davidians. I think the guy who led them, his name might have been David, but I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. It's a whole other issue. Then what I want to do today is I want to look a little bit more in depth into Howard Temple's evidence that was given during the 2022 Royal Commission of Inquiry. I am actually going to put the information up on my screen, and I will share that with you once I get my Zoom sorted. So let me see if I can do that. So I'm going to share this screen and for a while, just to make sure that you can see that this is accurate. You'll see here that what I've got is the transcript. I'm just trying to move this out the way. Can I move that? I'm not sure if you can see, but on my screen, I've got this stupid thing over here. There, gone. Okay, so this is the transcript, which you can download from the Royal Commission Inquiry into Abuse and Care from their website. And this is a 70-page document, and it is the verbatim transcript of the evidence provided by Mr. Temple and in parts from Mrs. Steadfast. Remember, Mrs. Steadfast was the acting principal of the Glory Vale Christian School at that time. She'd been appointed the acting principal in August of 2022, and this evidence hearing was given on the 13th of October 2022. You will see onto the left side of the screen that, yes, I have used the AI assistant just to help make a bit more sense of this rather large document. And I put in specific questions into the AI assistant, and then made sure that they link directly and accurately to this information. In places where I think I might need to go back to the original document, I will do so. But I am going to stop sharing this screen right now because you can read that for yourself. You can download that document. But I am, however, going to continue. Just moving that over there. I'm going to continue with the information on the screen in front of me. So again, if you see me looking to the side, it's because I'm looking at another screen and not looking directly at the webcam. So the first question I had about Mr. Temple's evidence, and actually I might just share something else with you. There is the actual video of the screen as well. Oh, sorry, off the screen, beg your pardon, of the entire evidence given by Mr. Temple. And I will just pull that page up, and then I will share screen again. It is a very lengthy video that you can watch. You can watch that alongside the transcript, but I have just marked here at 11 minutes 41 and 7 seconds. That is the beginning of the questioning by Ms. Bezier, which you will see here on page 40 of the document. So if you started on page 40 of the document, if you download the PDF and go to 11 minutes 41:07, you'll be at that point. The information provided beforehand during this filming of the evidence came from a number of other people, including people giving evidence around their experience in the Catholic Church and other survivors. So I've just clipped that to 11 minutes 41:07, which is the beginning of Miss Bezier's questioning. So Miss Bezier begins by asking Howard Temple about the origins of the Glory Vale Christian community, and I've already covered that in previous videos, so I'm not going to go through that. He's asked, this is on page 41, so I do acknowledge that Mr. Temple, at the time, he's an elderly, be considered to be an older gentleman, not elderly. He, as I said in other videos, is an ex-US Navy engineer, but he's asked how many people were living in the community in the 1970s. He said about 30 people in 1970, but it could have been 1975. It could have been 75, beg your pardon. So he's saying it could be 30 people, it could be 75. And then he states, I don't remember that far, but probably 75 people at the time. So it's quite a huge change from 30. That's quite a large movement. So as I'd watched that video of his evidence, and as I went through the transcript, I did note that there are a number of times that Mr. Temple, before answering a question, would make a statement that his memory was not good. So I asked the question in the AI assist, how many times does Mr. Temple state his memory is not good? And the answer came up. Mr. Temple makes several references to his memory not being good or being weak during the proceedings. And it then gives 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 examples. The first one being the one that I've just read to you. In discussing the timing of events in the 70s, he first of all says, I'm working on my memory now, ma'am. The second occasion, when asked about details of hopeful Christian's trial and imprisonment, he states, I'm going back on my memory. I mean, I know using my memory can be a good excuse for not answering the question, isn't it? It could be, but it's not an excuse. It's not a reason. It's not my reason. Honestly, I'm a bit weak in my memory now. It could be to do with my age. So I want to give a bit of grace to Mr. Temple that he may at times have difficulties with his memory. However, my question around that would be the whole experience of the police undertaking the raid in 1994. Mr. Hopeful Christian, Neville Cooper, undergoing an investigation, questions being asked, then being arrested, facing a court trial, then imprisonment. One would think that's a fairly significant event. But I'm going to put a pause there. So I just want to go to the question, which again I thought was really interesting. And this is a little bit around just, I want to give you a bit of a visual picture. I did have talked about it, and I will see about doing a video where I can actually use Google Earth to show you the layout of the community on the West Coast. So Mr. Temple is asked about the number of buildings and the living arrangements, and he agrees there's a central dining room, a very large commercial kitchen, and a gathering area. Is that correct? Yes. And then 4 hostels where the families live. That's correct, yes. My understanding there was 3. And when I show you on Google Earth, it does look like 3, but I could be stand corrected and there may be 4. Mr. Temple, yeah, yes, that's correct. I understand, he's asked the question, I understand in those hostels the families live on the first 2 floors. That's correct, yes. You may remember I mentioned that. There are 3 stories and the accommodation and the individual family rooms are on the ground floor and the first floor. Mr. Temples then asked how many families are living per floor, and he agrees that approximately 11 families would live per floor. 11 family groups per floor, but it may vary. So there may be more, there may be less, is what he's saying. Then he's asked about, well, they're rather large families. So each family would have around 10 children. Is that right? And he agrees, and then states that the largest one would have 13. So if we take that, that's 11 families per floor. So each hostel potentially has 220? More than that, because that would be the children. So 220 children potentially, so 110 per floor, with then 22 adults per floor. So that would make 220 children per hostel with 44 adults. That's a lot of children. He's asked about the size of the bedrooms and whether they have 1 bedroom or maybe 2. And he says yes, in some cases they may have 3 bedrooms. It's then pointed out that predominantly it's just a normal sized bedroom, perhaps up to 10 to 12 people. So 10 children and their parents in a normal sized bedroom. And then he has to do I just have to think for a minute. Sorry, that's okay. Then he says, 3 bedroom for 12 people. And Mr. Steadfast sort of whispers in his ear and he states, yes, 3 bedrooms for 12 people. My understanding from talking with people who've lived in these hostels and who have in the last years left the Gloriavale Christian community is that predominantly one family has one room. There may be occasions you could get 2 bedrooms. I have not heard any family mention 3 bedrooms. And on one occasion, it was disclosed to me that when the parents requested 2 bedrooms for their extended family, so that's the parents with quite a large number of teenage boys and a teenage girl, that was denied. They were not allowed or given permission to have that. They were again confined to a single bedroom. Then Mr. Temple is asked that whether the bedroom, so we call that their own family room, their individual room where their parents and children sleep, is that the only private area in the hostel? Mr. Temple replies, that would be right. Yes, that's right, those bedrooms. He's then asked, so when you talk of having family time and meal times, that would be in a communal area with 11 families, wouldn't it? So not all the meals now are in the large dining room that you will see in many of the documentaries and many of the video footage related to Gloriavale Christian community. And more recently, partly I've been told, as a result of the COVID restrictions, it has become the practice that the majority of meals will be in the dining room on each floor of the hostel. So if that's 4 hostels, that's 8 dining rooms. So each hostel having 2 dining rooms. So each floor with approximately 132 people, so 110 children potentially, with 22 adults. So that is who would be at each meal. So it's hard to sort of imagine that as a family time or family meal. It's a very large number of people to manage and the logistics of getting all of those people fed. And Mr. Temple does say we have breakfast and lunch in the communal dining room, but the dinner we have at home now. So the hostel is referred to the home. And that's clarified. When you're talking about the home, you mean the hostel. Each floor has a communal room. He says, yes, that's correct. Okay, so now get that picture in your mind, that these hostels are very large. Those of you who have gone away on school camps or through youth camps or scouts, whatever, will have had that experience of being around that many people at a mealtime, the amount of noise, the amount of movement, and also with the number of children and the adult ratio. So potentially 22 adults supervising 110 children or more, maybe less. Some couples may only just be in the early stages of their family time and may have a smaller family, but potentially 100 plus children with 22 adults. That's not a huge ratio. And anyone who works in education, early childcare would know that adult child ratio and maintaining that is critical for safety. So we've got a lot of children, even in the mealtime, they may be sitting with their parents, but these parents are not going to be able to adequately or effectively supervise each of the children. Okay, so this testimony goes on for quite some bit, and many questions are asked about the hierarchy, who initiated some of the documents, who had input into it. And it's pointed out that in one of the responses, it's document 147 in the bundle, that the description is given around the gender roles. So how, and remember, this is part of my concern, that the leadership in Gloriavale, so we have the overseeing shepherds, servants, and then there are some other male leadership roles, such as overseeing the work groups, overseeing the different areas that children and young people would be involved in. So Mr. Temple replies, well, it's pointed out from their beliefs in the website, gender roles in the Gloriavale community are defined along biblical lines with specific roles for men and women as outlined in the New Testament. Men have traditionally been the decision makers and bread earners, while women have taken their place as mothers running household areas, in later years paid work as teachers in the early child centres caring for children, not specifically the school. So their website refers to the women taking the role of early childhood centres, the childhood centres, which I understood there are 4, and that's possibly related to the childhood centres being within the hostels, 4 hostels, then 4 childhood centres. So what's interesting is I look through all of this part of Mr. Temple's evidence. He gives confident answers, and you can see that if you watch the actual video of his evidence. He often says, yes, that's correct. Yes, that's correct. At times he's able to expand on his answers. So, for example, he's asked a question. This is on page 46 of the document. He's asked a question about beginning work in the mid-1980s, and the first sort of printed copy was in 1989. Would that be right? And this is about a document. There are 2 important documents. So there's the commitment one, and there's what we believe. And he's asked questions about the what we believe document, which I understand from what I've been told is used within the Gloriavale Christian community to almost supersede or come first before the Bible. So he's asked the question about when it was printed in 1989. He goes, that would be right. I can't comment on the beginning of it, but it was finished and made public to the community in 1989. No problems with his memory there. He was able to answer that question, comes across as confident. It comes across as a clear recollection. He's not struggling. So again, as it goes through, he's able to answer questions and expand on his answers. He's asked about a question around this document, and this leads directly to the cause of harm. So, sorry, I hope I'm not boring people, but if you are following along, this is to make sure this is linking cohesively. So it's pointed out to Mr. Temple that in the document it states, I will never betray any confidence about any person in this community to any person outside this community, nor share with any person outside this community any details about anyone's life here, if to do so could, in the judgment of the leaders of the church, be used unjustly against the church or any of its members. So sit with that for a moment. So all of the young people and adults who are asked to sign the commitment document are asked to state that they adhere to the what we believe document, which says that they will never betray the confidence of any person in the community and share with anyone outside of the community anything or any details about anyone's life within the community. Mr. Temple, yes, that's correct. He's asked, would you agree that having that doctrine meant that you were effectively preventing the reporting of crime? Mr. Temple doesn't quite answer the question. He says, that was written for anyone in the church. All right, in the church, not outside the church. It didn't cover those, only the ones in the church, because it refers to our brother. But looking at it like that, it must say yes, yes. We would not report a crime to the outside. So the first part of his answer, he's saying, well, it doesn't apply to people outside of the church, only those in the church. So anyone outside of the church could go to the authorities or could speak to someone about what's going on in the community, but not the people in the community. But then he does at the end, his last sentence, but looking at it like that, it must say, yes, we would not report a crime to the outside. So he's asked if that was a policy, that there was a policy in place within the Gloriavale Christian community that prevented members from reporting crimes to outside authorities. Mr. Temple again agrees. According to that word, so the wording of the document, yes, that's correct. He's asked, and everybody in the community knew of this policy, didn't they? Mr. Temple, yes, that's right. So the children would have known about this policy. And he starts to hedge. Goes, children aren't, they would know that book. They would know what we believe. So the book, what we believe, they would know it's in the community, I presume. I would say not everybody in the community had a copy of that book. That statement in itself is a little alarming. They're asked to sign a commitment to it, but they might not have a copy of the book. So how are they knowing what's in the book? Oh, that's right. The leaders tell them. And of course, what the leaders say would have to be correct. And he also goes on to say he would not expect that it's a requirement for children to know that book because it doesn't really apply to children. Wow. Well, if the children are being harmed, and if there's criminal acts of specific harm to children, does that policy not apply to children? The answer is illogical because by logic, it does apply to children. He goes on to say, in the church, we talk about it refers to the commitment and what we believe. But we have children there that get baptized right on down to 7, 8 years old that get baptized. And once they're baptized, they're a member of the community. But then they're not expected to know all of this detail like this. So they become a member of the community when they're baptized. But he's saying, but this doesn't apply to them and they really don't need to know the details. However, it is quite clear, and I've even had it told to me by a young person, an adolescent. This is, this is not historical. This was a short time ago, who had said that they knew that when a rangatamariki or the police came in to ask questions, they were not to tell what happened. They were told explicitly to say they're happy to live in Gloriavale, they love living there, and everything is rosy, nothing to see here. And that was, I was told that after this evidence was given. So this is post 2022. So it's got, the questioning goes on around how that policy of not going to outside authorities would have impacted on the ability of members within the community to raise concerns outside of Gloriavale. And again, Mr. Temple is giving expanded answers, often 2 or 3 sentences. He's able to speak clearly to this document and the policy. But let's carry on. So when I look back to what I was searching using the AI assistant, as I said, there are multiple examples where he implies when he's asked a question that makes him feel uncomfortable. It's my personal opinion and my observation from looking at that video of his evidence. He does default to, oh, I can't remember. I'm working off my memory now. My memory's not as good as it used to be. Oh, I'm not sure. And I could be wrong, and I do want to give Mr. Temple some grace here because of his age, but he actually let slip, and some would say it's a Freudian slip. Some lawyers have described it as a statement which comes from a guilty conscience, where you say the very thing that you know you're doing, but you say it in the negative. I mean, Mr. Temple, I know using my memory can be a good excuse for not answering the question, isn't it? It could be, but it's not an excuse. It's not a reason. It's not my reason. Interesting that you say that, Mr. Temple. So then I went to the next one. So here we've got, oh, beg your pardon, I asked for explicit. Each instance, Mr. Temple mentions poor memory. So number one, on the timing of events in 1970s. I said that at the beginning. I'm working on my memory now, ma'am. I would have thought it would have been earlier than that. Number two, on the size of the community in 1970. I don't really remember that far, but probably 75 people at that time. Number three, on the number of members at Gloriavale. So this is now Lake Hapiri on the west coast, so not Springbank. He's asked, what is the number of the people? How many people live in Gloriavale? This was in 1922. And he says, I don't remember that number being an exact number of the members there. And from my memory, it was suggested there were approximately like 550 people. So think about the 4 hostels, 110 children on each floor, plus there are a number of farms where a family, sometimes even with their grandparents, are living off the main compound site, but still part of the wider Gloriavale community. Number 4, on recalling details of hopeful Christians' trial and imprisonment. So I'm quoting here. I'm just trying to go back on my memory. I mean, I know using my memory can be a good excuse for not answering the question, isn't it? It could be, but that it's not an excuse. It's not a reason. It's not my reason. Honestly, I'm a bit weak in my memory now. It could be to do with my age, but I remember very little being said about it. Very little being said. Excuse me, Mr. Temple? There were a number of people from Gloriavale who attended the trial in support of Hopeful Christian. I have been told, Mr. Temple, that during the time that Hopeful Christian was in prison, serving a sentence in one of the Christchurch prisons, I'm not sure if it was the main men's prison or whether it was the prison in Rolleston, possibly quite likely the Rolleston prison, because there is a specialist unit there. Kimarawa, if those who know will know. So yeah, I'm struggling here. You're saying it's your memory and you're not really recalling it, but you would have been taking over some of the leadership at that time. Plus, in addition to that, Mr. Temple, I have a number of people who have told me individually, not in a group setting, so I've had consistency in what's been explained to me, that they were told by the leadership, this was discussed, this was told to the community, that the reason that Hopeful Christian was in prison was because he was being persecuted for his faith and belief, and it was an attempt by the government to shut down Gloriavale. It was discussed more than once in front of the whole community. So, but I remember very little being said about it, very little being said. Interesting. On recalling if he told the community about Hopeful Christian's conviction, not to those details, but I don't doubt, and I would most certainly want to believe, and believe that I would have told them the truth, that he was convicted of specific harm to children, SA. So I'm not going to broadcast that out loud. So he says, I believe, I would believe, and I would have told them the truth. Mr. Temple, I have it on good authority from many people who did not tell them the truth. On recalling if the leaders told the community about religious persecution, I can't remember that one, hearing that type of thing being said. Now, I don't doubt that it was said. I don't doubt it was because other people could think that way and they could speak that way. I can't remember hearing it, but this is just going on my understanding of people and our people. So you do acknowledge it was probably said, but not by you. And you don't doubt that other people might say that, but you can't remember hearing it. Can't remember saying it yourself, because my understanding is you did. Okay. Number 7. So these are the number of times during his evidence that he used a fallback position of my memory's not so good, I can't quite remember, as a way of diverting or avoiding answering the question directly. When other examples, he's able to give a detailed answer, use multiple sentences. Okay, so number 7, on recalling Hopeful Christian's parole. I remember him coming back to Gloryvale. I don't remember on parole, though. I would stand if corrected if Rachel here could help me on it. I'd have to look at that part of the video again, but my recollection is she looked confused. And I interpreted that part of the video and evidence that Rachel did not know he was on parole, so therefore the wider community weren't knowing, but the leadership would have known. That just, I'm going to be quite adamant on that. I realize this is my opinion, but on documents I've read, even coming from Department of Corrections regarding the potential for parole, that there would have that information would have had to have been shared with the leadership due to the convictions of Hopeful Christian. So number 8, now this is regarding the date of change in the what we believe and the policy of not reporting specific harm to children and other adults to the police. So he's asked about the many versions of the document and when it was altered or when it was changed. And he says that I think the first version from memory, it was first written or published in 1989. And it's been rewritten a number of times. He's challenged by seeing, well, the 2015 version, and he says yes, it still had the commitment that you would never take anyone in the community to the authorities. That was as late as 2015. He says, yes, okay, but there has been one written because we have seen these things. There's another volume written in 2022. He's challenged again. Yes, I understand you got rid of it in 2022, but I'm just trying to establish that a policy was in place and we have government agencies that required, for example, your school to have things like police vetting in place, and that this policy was preventing people from going to authorities to ensure that children and other people were not being harmed. Okay. So his first answer to the questions on recalling the date of policy of not reporting abuse being changed, I can't remember the date. It was well after that prison sentence anyway. It was well after that. So remember, Neville Cooper went to prison, was sentenced to initially 6 years prison, reduced to 5 years on appeal. He served 11 years before he was released back to the community. So Mr. Temple is trying to say, no, that policy changed after 1994. And he's challenged and said, well, it was still in place. It's still in your document, 2015. And then he accurately says, well, no, actually, it was the latest version was 2022. When was the date of the Royal Commission of Inquiry? 2022. So you knew in 1994, and you yourself have said in your evidence that you would have told the community the specifics around Hopeful Christian's conviction, but you didn't. But you said you would, so you obviously know. That was 1994, and it's not changed until 2022. So during that entire time, a policy was actively promoted by the leadership of Glorival and Mr. Temple in particular, being the overseeing shepherd after the death of Hopeful Christian in 2018, that the people in the community, adults, young people, were not to go to outside authorities, that this would have been dealt with in-house. Remember, the approach being the leadership will investigate. If they decide it's occurred, they will encourage the perpetrator to publicly ask for forgiveness and the victim or victims to forgive the perpetrator, all dealt with within the community. 2022 was when that policy changed. Number 9, this is memory problems, Mr. Temple's memory problems. We've got one more after this. On being asked about government authorities questioning him on that doctrine, that specific policy, I can't remember anybody questioning on that one. We questioned it among ourselves. I can't remember anybody questioning it. Nobody's questioned me on it outside the community. Now, whether they questioned Hopeful or not, I don't know, I'm sorry. Well, Hopeful passed away in 2018. The police were involved in a criminal investigation in 1994. And you're saying nobody's asked anything about this? Again, when being asked specifically about a document or an event, Mr. Temple would say, I'm sorry, I don't remember anything. I've got a paper written by a person that was there. Now, whether he told a bunch of lies or not, I don't think so. I don't have any reason to believe that he would be lying about the matter. Okay, so let's go through, try to summarize this. So my next question in the AI assist, how did Mr. Temple respond to allegations of specific harm to children? Number 1, the historical policy and practice was not to report to authorities. Mr. Temple acknowledged that Glorival's doctrine and policy as set out in documents like What We Believe and the Declaration of Commitment explicitly prevented reporting crimes, including child essay, to outside authorities, that instead all matters were to be handled internally by church leaders. He goes on to say that these allegations of abuse, specific harm to children, were historically dealt with by a group of male leaders who would seek the offender's repentance and require the victim to forgive. Victims sometimes had to appear before leaders or even the congregation and were told to forgive the perpetrator. One of more than one of Hopeful Christian's own grandchildren have stated publicly And as I understand in affidavits and evidence, that as children, that's what they experienced. The shame of being having to appear before the leaders and being told that they must forgive the perpetrator. And at times having to do that in front of the entire community, the harm that that does. We know that in the criminal courts, the victim of criminal offences such as this are treated very carefully. They may be able to give evidence behind a screen or by video, so they don't need to appear in the court or even see the perpetrator. Yet in Gloriavale, both in Springbank and more recently on the West Coast, they at the least would be appearing before the leaders and being told you must forgive this person, or the community where they must stand up and say, I forgive the perpetrator. I forgive him. Oh, no. So they were explicitly told. No empathy, no sympathy for the victim. The sympathy and empathy is for the perpetrator needing forgiveness. More recently, and especially leading up to this inquiry, that the offenders might be temporarily excluded from the community and some were not allowed to return. He did confirm no written records were kept of allegations or how they were handled. And probably, again, there's so many things that were the worst statements to be made. But there is a section of his evidence where he lays the blame for, if you like, investigations of specific child harm not occurring because of the reluctance of victims to come forward. So he tries that one. It doesn't go down well in his evidence. And he finally gets to the place where he admits that the previous approach of the policy not to report to authorities, to have the victims appear before the leadership, failed to protect victims. He agreed that the lack of reporting to the police allowed offenders to remain in positions of trust. And I'm going to add authority and leadership. This is in 2022, remember? 2022, to the Royal Commission of Inquiry. He finally gets to the place where he is able to acknowledge, after defending the policy, after defending their practice, after saying they didn't know the extent of the harm, they didn't understand that their approach would cause harm, tries to blame the victims because they were reluctant to come forward, and he finally agrees that the lack of reporting to a police allowed offenders to remain in positions of trust. And in fact, the primary finding of the Royal Commission of Inquiry, based on all of the documents provided by Gloriavale and Mr. Temple's evidence, was that the position the leadership took allowed abuse to continue after Neville Cooper, Hopeful Christian, had been convicted in 1994. And as I stated in video 4, which is still uploading, it is after this evidence, and this is what galls me, after giving this evidence in October 2022, Mr. Howard Temple is arrested. He's charged with allegations of specific harm. He denies those allegations. He then, during the court hearing, during the trial, he pleads guilty. After a number of women have already given evidence, and there is still more to come, and he pleads guilty. He's initially sentenced to 26 months in prison, which, in my opinion, would no doubt have offended him because Neville Cooper only did 11. And on appeal, basically, he's allowed to return to the community. My understanding, he is living off-site on one of the Christian Gloria Vale farms. So he's not living in the hostels. He's not walking around the floor with 110 children. He's not in the community large dining hall where he committed his offences as young girls walked past, and he would publicly touch them in inappropriate ways and then try to make it just sound like he's just being this maybe inappropriate granddad and he just likes to touch these girls. So he knew it in 2022, without a doubt. He knew what he himself did. And I read to you in video, one of the videos, I think it's video 4, you'll hear it. I read the list of names that I found, and I know that there are more, but these are the ones that I found and that you could check yourself. Google search, you will find them. And you will see that it is hard to accept that the leadership did not know the extent. Before I finish this video, so Mrs. Steadfast, I've got her down here as Miss Steadfast. So I wanted to know what she said about these. She says, first of all, she's never witnessed or experienced physical punishment or abuse in the school or early childhood centres during her time as a student or a teacher. So she herself hasn't witnessed it or experienced it. And that might be because of her privileged position within this community. But she acknowledged hearing about such incidents only recently or as stories from the past, in particular from the late 80s. The documentary, Devotion. She makes a statement in there that 1994, when the police came into the Springbank community, executed a search warrant. They were looking for specific evidence. They seized videos, and she says that they also would put in the drawers in the bedrooms where they were sleeping in the family rooms a little card which says, if you or anyone else you know are being harmed, you can call this number. She says she takes it to her mum. This is in 1994, and said, what's this all about? And her mother, she says on the documentary, well, her mother told her. So she's at least known since 1994, not the late 80s. She acknowledges that in the past, there was some awareness of physical punishment in the community, but she emphasises in her evidence to the Royal Commission of Inquiry that her direct experience did not include witnessing abuse. So she's distancing herself. She said, well, I know there was some awareness that this may have been happening, but I didn't see it myself. I didn't experience it. She said, this is one of the last things, which again, you've got to contrast this to what she says in the documentary. So this is 2022, and the documentary came out at the end of June 2026. And she's defending the Gloria Vale community. But here in her evidence, she acknowledges that changing the culture within Gloria Vale is a significant challenge given the community's history and doctrines. So she says it's going to be hard to do that given the history of these doctrines. Because remember, the doctrine, the book, what we believe, and those policies around the commitment and signing the contract, they have gone down through the generations. So, Hopeful Christian missed Howard Temple, the first generation. On the documentary Devotion, The Glory of Our Story, you will hear from Phil Cooper. He's second generation. His children are third generation. Some of those children now are also parents, so that's fourth generation, and recently confirmed we're getting to fifth generation. So these would be Mr. Temple's great grandchildren. So Mr. Temple, Mr. Christian, children, grandchildren, great grandchildren. So the problem around the culture of Glorival and the harm that this causes, this is now fed down intergenerationally around how things work in the community, the looking up to the leadership, the accepting everything the leadership tells them around how the community will run, not talking to authorities, hiding this from people outside, because remember the policy until 2022, just before this Royal Commission of Inquiry changed, the policy was don't even talk to people outside the community of what life is like or about the details of anyone's life. The idea of keeping it secret, keeping it hidden, keeping it isolated has been ingrained. Some would say has now become part of the DNA. So to summarize this particular video, in giving evidence to the Royal Commission of Inquiry, it is my opinion, based on what I've read, based on what I've watched, based on what I've just studied here, Mr. Temple used the excuse of his memory to divert from answering specific questions that made him feel uncomfortable. At times, he was able to give clear answers with multiple questions and details. Other times when it came down to, especially around the continued abuse that occurred and was perpetuated by the teachings of the leadership, then his memory became vague. It is my opinion based on reading, watching video footage, watching documentaries, going back through things, that there was a deliberate attempt to mislead the Royal Commission of Inquiry and divert attention away, and thankfully it did not. As I finish, I am going to bring up the poster that I presented at the 2025 International Conference around childhood trauma. I will share this. This is the poster. It looks like a PowerPoint. I'm just waiting for it to open. It is coming up. Let us see. I'm just waiting for it to come up properly. It is coming. I am going to go to move that across to here. As I've said before, I'm actually videoing this through the Zoom platform. I do this because I am more confident and comfortable to share screens and share documents that I have got, or in some cases, maybe videos. So I am going to run through this presentation that I prepared and provided to the International Childhood Trauma Conference in Melbourne 2025. Many Australians who were present, who were present at my presentation as I talked them through and presented this information were shocked. Might talk about that in detail later. I mentioned this photograph. This photograph is shown in the documentary, and this photograph is displayed on the walls within Gloriavale. And it is described in the documentary that this is a photograph of all of the children at that time within Gloriavale. So I'm not sure of the exact year, but at the time this photograph was taken, the older two children of each family is not present in this photo. So this is a photograph of children number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, etc. of each family. And when I said that each floor of the hostel could have 110 children or more, you can see from this photograph why I state that. Not just because of the average size of the family, but there is documentation. There are a large number of children in this community. In the documentary, it's stated that they use this photograph to talk to people to promote their policy of not using birth control or any methods of pacing the number of children or when a child is born or the pregnancies of women. And even I've heard it suggested, and it's been shown in other documentaries where adults are asked about the issue of contraception, that this would have been the number of children killed if they had allowed birth control. This is what they tell the children. If we allowed birth control, you would have been killed. You would not be here. You would not be alive. You would not exist. But they use the word killed. You can watch other documentaries and you'll see that. So I point out the multiple risks to children. And this is, you're going to see this. This is the finding of the Royal Commission of Inquiry. Neglect, poor education, isolation, manipulation, and abuse. In my presentation, I have pointed out the history. We've already covered that. I take out quotes from, and this was when I accessed the Gloriavale website in June 2025, quote, "We seek perfect obedience to God, complete unity of thought, no self-will." Unity, complete unity is what the leadership demand, require. To be out of unity is the biggest sin. Out of unity with the leadership. This is not biblical teaching. This is not Christian teaching. This is the Gloriavale teaching. They say that the safety of children is the highest importance. However, Mr. Temple acknowledged the policies that existed up until 2022 failed to protect the safety of children and caused harm. They say that from 2020, I haven't even touched on that, in 2020, that they fully cooperated with police to investigate allegations. And he said, "Oh, I don't remember anyone asking me about our policies." Says this in 2022. If your memory is that bad, maybe an assessment is required. I just want to point out all these photographs are publicly available. I'm not breaching anyone's copyright. Just want to point out here, this person and this person, sorry, this is Neville Cooper. This person here appears in the documentary Devotion. And I watched it again for the third time, not the entire part because I just couldn't stomach it. This is less than 5 minutes into that documentary, the first episode, and this person here distances himself from all of the convictions of 18 plus men, including Howard Temple, including Neville Cooper, and he says, "Oh, but they weren't us. We weren't the ones." No. Here he is in his leadership role here. And he's sitting next to this person who went to prison. I haven't identified these other people, but I am pretty sure that some of these guys that are sitting in this group, and he says, oh, but this isn't us, and he distances himself. Okay, I've gone through all of that. So here's the results of the abuse and care inquiry. They found, this is a finding that you will see from the abuse and care inquiry, said this stemmed from the authoritarian control the leadership had over the community and co-occurred with spiritual abuse. They found that the abuse included isolation, humiliation, economic neglect, manipulation, shame, educational neglect, discrimination towards Rainbow, Maori, and children who experience disability. They found that the doctrines and teachings and the leadership allowed a culture of abuse to occur. The Royal Commission of Inquiry found that the leadership failed to address intergenerational abuse, which perpetuated a cycle of harm. That the leadership failed to deal with perpetrators of abuse and allowed perpetrators to continue to live in the community. Some of these statements I've already referred to, and again, these photographs are all available in the public sphere. Okay, so this is where I have spoken in my presentation to, again, my biggest concern around Glorival and its existence and how this causes harm, documented through research. And I've linked it together to adverse childhood experiences, that the leadership imposes rules over parental authority. The parents do not have authority over their children. It's the leadership. The parents will do what the leadership tell them. So it takes away that level of protection between a child, a vulnerable child, and the teachings of these adult men who they themselves were perpetrators. Children in this community are deprived of normal childhood experiences, such as even having their own bedroom. Being able to have play dates after school with friends, to participate in community activities outside of Glorival, such as sporting events. They're harmed through the geographical and social isolation. Do not talk to anyone outside the community about life in the community. Shaming of children in front of the entire community, making them forgive. But also, if they have misbehaved in some way, the documentary Devotion, the Glorival Story, Mr. Philip Cooper talks about walking into the communal dining hall, seeing his son standing on the stage in front of the entire community, hundreds of people, because his son had wet the bed, and Neville Cooper, who was the grandfather of that son, is shaming and humiliating this child in front of the entire community. Parental separation through expulsion, that is talked about on the Glorival documentary Devotion, and I might talk about that in another video. And they talk about how there are children in Glorival, but they all know their father, even if the father's not there, because the mother will remain in Glorival or will return to Glorival, because in doing so, she then secures the salvation of her children. The manipulation and coercion there is just astounding. It's documented emotional, psychological, and verbal abuse, exposure to family violence within the family unit, and adults who have left have talked about that, and there have been fathers that have been convicted for beating their children. And you think about that pressure to remain in unity and to be shamed because your child is misbehaving. And this builds this culture of abuse within Glorival. Okay, so that's my presentation. There are a number of documentaries that I've spoken about, Escaping Utopia being one of them. And of course, I've been banging on about Devotion, the Glorival story, as I found it to be insultingly misleading. These are my opinions. What I'm hoping is that anyone who watches this video, and I see that an increasing number of people are starting to view these videos, you'll form your own opinions. Don't just accept what I'm saying, but I'm trying to show where my concerns have come from, how I've formed my opinion, and my opinion being that the leadership of Gloriaval, both past and present, has and continues to harm those who live in Gloriaval, the adults, the young people, and in particular the children. And leaders such as Mr. Howard Temple have misled, have tried to divert attention, and those on the documentary continue to do so. And that is shameful. And to Mr. Howard Temple, I say, shame on you, sir.